All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today for UGE's annual general meeting. Um, I'll just get started here. So we'll go through the annual general meeting today in this fashion. So number one, I'll just give a quick overview in terms of today's webinar. Number two is we'll go through the formalities. So this is the very scripted part of today's session where we go through the the approval from the proxy you guys would have all received. After that, we're going to close up the formality part of it and move on to a business update where we'll run through about 10 slides or so in terms of some recent updates for UGE, and then we'll move into a Q&A. So at that point in time, if anybody would like to ask any questions, we're more than happy to take those through the Q&A function on the left-hand side of your screen. As we go through the formalities, I suspect that several or most of you would have already voted by the forms you would have received in the mail. But at the time that we go through, we will ask that anybody that would like to place their vote in this meeting can also do so through the chat function. And Robert Van Duynhoven, our COO and also our corporate secretary, will take a note of that as we do. So thanks again for joining. With that, we're going to move into the more scripted part of the session here. So from that, I'll say that this annual general and special meeting of the shareholders of UGE International Limited will now come to order. My name is Nicholas Blitterswyk, and I'm the CEO of the corporation. In accordance with the bylaws of the corporation, I shall preside as chairman of the meeting, and Robert Van Duynhoven, corporate secretary, will act as secretary of the meeting. I hereby appoint Rosa Garofalo as TSX Trust Company as scrutineer for the purposes of this meeting. There has been filed with me by the scrutineer of the meeting proof of mailing of the notice of this meeting and accompanying documents. I direct that the affidavit of mailing of the notice of this meeting and accompanying documents be annexed to the minutes of this meeting as Schedule A. With the consent of the meeting, we will now dispense with the reading of the notice. The Secretary advises me that the requisite quorum of shareholders is present, and I declare that this meeting is properly constituted for the transacting of business. I have received the scrutineer's report on attendance and direct that it be annexed to the minutes of this meeting as Schedule B. In order to expedite the voting on the matters to come before the meeting, the Business Corporations Act of Ontario and the bylaws of the corporation permit voting on all matters to take place using the voting mechanism provided in this webinar, unless a shareholder or proxy holder demands the ballot be conducted on any motion. I note that the financial statements of the corporation for the year ended December 31st, 2021, and the auditor's report thereon, together with management's discussion and analysis for that period, were distributed electronically to shareholders of the corporation, along with management's information circular dated May 15th, 2022, and such materials are available on sedar.com under the corporation's profile. We will now proceed with the election of directors for the ensuing year. Robert Van Duynhoven will now read the names of the persons listed on the information circular who have been proposed for election as directors for the coming year, each of whom has agreed to serve as a director if elected.
I nominate Stephen Blum, Wendy Liu, Nicholas Blitterswyk, Stephen Markscheid, Christopher Asimakis, Jan Yang, Zhengrong Zhu for election as directors of the corporation to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders or until their successors are elected or appointed.
Thank you, Robert. May I have the nomination seconded?
I second.
Thank you, Sean. Robert Van Duynhoven will now move the confirming resolution.
Be it resolved that Stephen Blum, Wendy Liu, Nicholas Blitterswyk, Stephen Markscheid, Christopher Asimakis, Jan Yang, Zhengrong Zhu, and they are hereby elected as directors of the corporation to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders or until their successors are elected or appointed.
Thanks, Robert. May I have the resolution seconded?
I second.
Thank you, Sean. I now put the resolution to the meeting. Although we are electing directors on an individual basis, in the interest of time, rather than list all the nominees, I would ask that anyone that is voting at this meeting, as opposed to having already submitted their vote, that is withholding their vote for any of the proposed nominees, please use the chat mechanism provided in this webinar and note accordingly at this time. We will then ask each of you who are withholding for the name and will have the secretary note it. If a shareholder or proxy holder does not respond, it will be assumed that they are voting for or that they've already voted for all the proposed nominees. So if any are withholding, please feel free to message as such in the chat function. I also note that a majority of shares voted in favor pursuant to the scrutineer's report. I declare those nominated to have been elected as directors of the corporation to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders or until their successors are elected or appointed. The next item of business is the appointment of auditors for the current year and authorizing the directors to fix their remuneration. I would ask someone to move the resolution appointing the auditors for the current year.
I so move.
Thank you, Robert. Be
Yeah.
it resolved. Oh, go
Okay.
ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Should I read that or you? Is that?
I believe that would be yourself.
Yes. Be it resolved that KPMG LLP, Chartered Accountants, licensed public accountants, be, and they are hereby appointed auditors of the corporation to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders or until their successors are elected or appointed, and that the directors are authorized to fix their remuneration.
Thanks, Robert. May I have the resolution seconded?
I second.
Great. Thanks, Sean. I now put the resolution to the meeting. I would ask that anyone that is voting at this meeting, as opposed to having already submitted their vote, that is withholding their vote for the resolution, please use the chat mechanism provided in this presentation and note accordingly at this time. We will then have the secretary note it. If a shareholder or proxy holder does not respond, it will be assumed they are voting for the resolution. So if any are withholding, please feel free to message as such in the chat. Again, I also note that the majority of shares voted in favor pursuant to the scrutineer's report, and I declare the resolution carried. We will now proceed with the next matter of business, being the adoption of a new Omnibus Equity Incentive Plan, including the United States subplan, as described in the Management Information Circular dated May 15th of 2022. Robert, if I could have you move that?
Yeah, I move. Be it resolved that the corporation's new Omnibus Equity Incentive Plan, as further described in Management Information Circular dated May 15th, 2022, is hereby approved.
Thanks, Robert. May I have someone second this resolution?
I second.
Thank you, Sean. I now put the resolution to the meeting. I would ask that anyone that is voting at this meeting, as opposed to having already submitted their vote prior to the meeting, that is withholding their vote, please use the chat mechanism provided in this webinar and note accordingly at this time. We will then have the secretary note it, and if a shareholder or proxy holder does not respond, it will be assumed they are voting for the resolution. I also, again, note that the majority of shares voted in favor pursuant to the scrutineer's report, so I declare the resolution carried. Aside from the business update, which we'll run through shortly and then have a Q&A, is there any other further business at this time? As such, that concluded the business of this annual general meeting of shareholders of UGE International Limited. The secretary will move the final resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the meeting be concluded.
Thanks, Robert. May I have the resolution seconded?
I second.
Thanks, Sean. I declare the motion carried and the meeting concluded. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We'll now roll into a brief business update. All right, so thanks everyone for taking part in this year's annual general meeting. With that, what we're going to do is we're going to run into a brief business update. Several of you probably follow our quarterly webinars and so on. And so from that perspective, some of this may be old news, but we'll give a quick run through here. So we're going to run through, number one, we'll just talk on all the growth that we're experiencing on the pipeline and backlog, and then also on the operating portfolio. And then we'll look a little bit forward in terms of our forecasted NTPs and CODs, which is a talk about when we're going to be actually building projects. We'll talk on supply chain and trade, and then also the recent green bond product that we launched in April and that we plan to scale up. So first, on the order of the growth of the business here. So first, we'll take a look at the project backlog, which is our primary forward indicator of future revenues. As those who have followed the story know, our backlog growth has been extremely strong in the last 2.5 years, as shown in this chart. In just under 2.5 years, we've seen our backlog grow more than 12x, and we expect to continue to add a high volume of good projects to our backlog as the months to come. Our increased growth rate has coincided with the work we did to evolve our business into being what we refer to as a full lifecycle developer. In our early years, we had been more focused on the development of projects and then acquired 2 companies in Toronto in 2016 and 2017 to increase our capabilities in engineering and building projects. In 2020, we began to finance our own projects and have continued to increase our capabilities in that area since then. We work in what is still a highly fragmented market. Through this full life cycle approach, we really believe that we're offering a better experience to our clients and will generate stronger returns over time. We believe that the approach will continue to lead to increased growth and market share going forward. On the operating portfolio, which is really the end game here for us, we've seen it scaling up quite rapidly as well. So Q4 2020 was really the first time that we had operating projects, and so that's why the chart starts there. And we've seen that scale up. The gray bar for Q1 of 2022 is a project that we announced had reached NTP, which is really the beginning of the deployment or construction phase just a couple days ago. So we're excited to get that one going, and we'll talk more about upcoming projects that we have coming up as well. Stages 4 and 5, for those who follow the company, you'll know that that's the deployment phase, and that also we've been expecting some of those projects to reach the stage 6 or operational status in this quarter, and we're going to have updates on that in the near future as well. So in terms of going forward, if you remember from the slide I just showed, the total bars as of the very recent update was about 5 megawatts. So we look at this slide here, and you see just how much we're expecting things to scale up over time. And if you haven't seen this chart before, it might take a little bit of time to interpret. The lighter green bars are the start of deployment for each of our projects. And so it starts with the Q2 2022. So right on the bottom left, you see a 1.0. That's the project that just entered construction recently, and the 1.5 are the projects that are just wrapping up construction. You can see that through Q4 of this year, there's in excess of 20 megawatts of projects that we expect to start deployment on. So we're going to see that prior graph really scaling up in the quarters and then of course the years to come. This graph is strictly for our backlog, but again, as people know that have been following the story, we continue to add to our backlog over time, and so we'll see this chart, evolve and grow over time there as well. So on supply chain and trade, we get asked a lot about this in the current environment, as of course. So we want to touch on this briefly as well. First, the biggest news in our industry has been related to a U.S. Department of Commerce investigation, and that was into the imports of solar panels from Southeast Asia. That investigation commenced in late March and significantly impacted the supply of solar panels into the U.S. because 85% of the solar panels used in our industry come from those 4 Southeast Asian countries that were under investigation. Um, Fortunately, about 2 weeks ago, President Biden issued a proclamation giving cover to the industry, and we have seen solar panel supply increasing and prices decreasing already as a result. So from that basis, we're feeling good about how the supply chains are evolving for us right now. Outside of that investigation, we're not seeing material supply chain disruptions, and so from that basis, we look forward to continue to focus on executing on our projects going forward. The last item to mention is our green bond product. We first issued a green bond in late 2018, which I think in many ways was kind of ahead of its time. And we completed our 3rd such issuance in April of this year. We believe we've created a really good product with broad appeal and look forward to further scaling up that initiative over time. The benefit of being a project company is that we are growing real assets over time, which open up many new lower cost and non-dilutive funding options for the company. Further, we believe that our green bond product is a real win-win for us and for our bondholders who can earn an attractive return on a secured product while helping us grow the use of solar. So we're looking forward to continuing to expand the use of that product or the reach of that product over time. So with that, we'll wrap up our business update section by highlighting our goals and then taking any questions. So we're at a really interesting and exciting time where we are putting all of our experience to work to grow an operating portfolio of high quality long-term assets. Our 2024 goals represent just the beginning of where we plan to take the business and is backed up by almost 200 megawatts now of projects we have in our backlog. As we continue to grow, we look forward to expanding our portfolio and reaching the point where we generate consistent cash flow for the company and for our shareholders. So thanks again for tuning in today. If anyone would like to ask any questions at this time, you may do so with the chat function on the left-hand side of your screen. We also have on this screen here other ways to reach us. So some of them obviously quite obvious. For example, our website. And then also, if I go to the next slide, you'll see, my contact information's on the screen. So is Sean, who you heard speak a bit in this presentation. Sean manages the investor relations for the company, and then Robert, who's also our COO. So let me just flip over to the Q&A section, see if we have any coming in. I'll admit that we do not yet have any coming in, so I'll give it a couple seconds here. But in the meantime, I'll just thank everyone again for tuning in, and just to go off script, just to say, we're really excited about how the company's been growing this year. We're really optimistic about the future of the company. Really feel like all the work we've been putting in over the last decade plus growing this company is really kind of happening at the right place, right time for us, with the growth of community solar, the growth of our backlog, the growth of our pipeline, the growth of our team, and it just feels like a really exciting time for the company. So with that, I will I'll press end on the webinar, but thanks again, and feel free to reach out to any of us at any time with any questions that you have. Thanks again.